the screen that changed humanity. The astonishing true story of television. The night. The world shranky. Imagine a night in America in the year 1920. A family sits quietly inside a small wooden house. The room is lit by a single lamp. Outside, the world is silent, except for the distant sound of a train. There is no television, no breaking news, no live sports, no movies playing in the living room. If something happened across the ocean, a war, a revolution, a scientific breakthrough, though people might not know about it for days, sometimes weeks. Now imagine something extraordinary. A small glowing box appears in the corner of that room. Inside that box, moving pictures begin to appear. A man speaks. A baseball game unfolds. A president addresses the nation. A rocket launches into space. And suddenly, the entire world is no longer far away. It is right there, in the living room. That glowing box would soon become one of the most powerful inventions in human history. It would change politics. It would shape culture. It would influence elections. It would create global celebrities. It would even change the way wars were fought and understood. That box was called television. But the story of television is not simple. It is not the invention of just one genius. Instead, it is a century-long adventure filled with dreamers, engineers, rivalries, failures, and astonishing breakthroughs. From dusty laboratories in Europe to experimental garages in rural America, to massive broadcasting studios in New York and Hollywood, television slowly evolved from a wild scientific dream into the most powerful storytelling machine the world had ever seen. And today, television is no longer just a box in the corner of a room. It is everywhere. On phones, on tablets, on airplanes, in Times Square, in space stations orbiting Earth. But to understand how television conquered the world, we must travel back to a time when the idea of sending images through the air sounded completely impossible. A time when the very concept of seeing someone who was not physically present seemed almost like magic. And the first person to seriously imagine that magic lived in the 19th century. The dream of seeing at a distance. Long before televisions existed, people dreamed of something extraordinary. They dreamed of seeing events happening far away in real time. In the early 19th century, the fastest way to send information was the telegraph. Invented in the 1830s, the telegraph allowed messages to travel across wires using electrical signals. Suddenly, information could move faster than a horse, faster than a ship, faster than a train. But the telegraph had one huge limitation. It could only send words, no images, no faces, no motion. Then came the telephone in 1876, invented by Alexander Graham Bell. Now voices could travel across wires. You could hear someone speaking from miles away. But still, you could not see them. For many scientists and inventors, this raised an irresistible question. If electricity could carry sound, could it also carry images? The disk that started everything. The first serious breakthrough came from a German university student named Paul Nipkow. In 1884, Nipkow invented something strange and revolutionary. It was called the Nipkow disk. The device looked simple, just a spinning metal disk with tiny holes arranged in a spiral pattern. But its concept was brilliant. When the disk spun in front of an image, each hole scanned a tiny piece of that image, line by line. If those light signals could be converted into electrical signals, another machine, then reconstructed it on another spinning disk. The image could be recreated somewhere else. For the first time in history, a machine existed that could theoretically transmit moving images. It was the first true blueprint for television. But there was a problem. Technology in the 1880s was not advanced enough to make it work properly. The idea existed. The dream existed. But the world would have to wait decades before the technology caught up. The teenage farm boy who saw the future. In 1921, on a small potato farm in Idaho, a 14-year-old boy was plowing a field. His name was Philo Farnsworth. As the plow cut straight lines across the soil, something incredible happened. Young Farnsworth had an idea. He imagined scanning an image line by line, just like the rows in the field. Instead of using a mechanical spinning disk like Nipkow's design, what if electronics could scan images using electrons? It was a radical idea, an electronic television system. Years later, Farnsworth built the first working prototype. In 1927, he successfully transmitted the first fully electronic television image. It was simple, just a straight line. But that line changed history. For the first time, moving images were transmitted electronically. The age of television had officially begun. The battle for television. But Farnsworth was not alone. Across the country, powerful corporations were racing to develop television technology. The most aggressive competitor was the giant American company, RCA. Its research division was led by a brilliant Russian-American engineer, Vladimir Zworykin. Zworykin developed his own electronic television system called the iconoscope. Soon, a fierce patent battle erupted between Farnsworth and RCA. For years, the two sides fought in court. RCA had enormous money and influence. Farnsworth had the original idea. In a dramatic legal victory, Farnsworth won. The court ruled that his early drawings from high school proved he invented electronic television first. It was one of the most famous patent battles in technology history, the first television broadcasts. By the late 1930s, television was finally ready for the public. In 1939, a historic moment occurred at the 1939 New York World's Fair, the President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt, appeared on television. It was the first televised presidential speech in American history. Visitors stood in amazement as moving images appeared on glowing screens. It felt like the future had arrived. But just as television was about to explode in popularity, the world was interrupted by something devastating. World War II. Factories stopped producing televisions. Resources were redirected toward the war effort. The television revolution was temporarily paused. But when the war ended, and television would explode across America in a way no one had imagined. The screen that changed humanity. The astonishing true story of Television Part 2. When America bought the future. The television explosion. When World War II ended in 1945, America was transformed. Factories that once produced tanks and fighter planes suddenly began manufacturing something completely different. Television sets. Before the war, fewer than 7,000 televisions existed in the entire United States. But within a few short years, something extraordinary happened. American families began bringing television into their homes. At first, these televisions were large wooden cabinets with small black and white screens. The image quality was blurry. The screens were tiny. Sometimes the signal disappeared entirely. But none of that mattered. Because for the first time in human history, people could watch events happening far away without leaving their homes. The living room had become a window to the world. The birth of American broadcasting as television spread, powerful broadcasting companies rushed to dominate the new medium. 3. Networks would soon control American television. The first was NBC, which had already become famous through radio broadcasting. The second was CBS, a network that quickly gained a reputation for high-quality news and entertainment. The third was ABC, which initially struggled, but later became one of the biggest media networks in the world. These networks began producing programs that would shape American culture. Comedy shows, news broadcasts, live theater, game shows, children's cartoons. 4. The first time, millions of Americans were watching the same programs at the same time. Television was not just technology. It was becoming a shared national experience. The first television superstars. Soon, television created a completely new kind of celebrity. People who were once unknown could suddenly become household names. One of the earliest television legends was Lucille Ball. Her show, I Love Lucy, became one of the most popular programs in television history. Millions of Americans laughed together every week as Lucy's wild schemes unfolded on screen. But television did not only entertain, it also informed. And sometimes it changed history. The day television changed politics. In 1960, something unprecedented happened. 2 presidential candidates faced each other in the first televised debate in American history. The candidates were John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. People who listened to the debate on the radio thought Nixon performed well. But people watching on television saw something completely different. Kennedy appeared calm, confident, and charismatic. Nixon looked nervous and uncomfortable under the studio lights. For the first time, appearance on television influenced a presidential election. Television had become a political force. The moon, landing on July 20th, 1969, television delivered one of the most unforgettable moments in human history. Millions of people around the world watched as a rocket landed on the moon. Astronaut Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface. Through a grainy black and white television broadcast, he spoke words that would echo through history. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. For the first time, humanity witnessed another world in real time. Television had connected the entire planet. The color revolution, early television was black and white. But in the 1950s and 1960s, engineers developed color broadcasting. Color television transformed the viewing experience. Sports looked more exciting. Nature documentaries looked breathtaking. Movies felt more immersive. By the 1970s, most American households owned a color television. The world had become more vibrant. Cable and satellite by the 1980s. Television entered a new era. Cable television exploded across America. Suddenly, viewers had access to dozens of channels, then hundreds. One revolutionary network appeared in 1980, CNN. CNN introduced something completely new, 24-hour news. For the first time, news could be broadcast continuously, day and night. Major events like wars, elections, and disasters could be watched live. Television had become the planet's fastest storytelling machine. The golden age of television. The 1990s and early 2000s, television storytelling reached new heights. Massive hit shows captured global audiences. Programs like Friends became worldwide cultural phenomena. Millions of viewers tuned in every week. Television characters felt like members of the family. At the same time, news networks, documentaries, and sports broadcasting expanded dramatically. Television was no longer just entertainment. It was information, education, politics, culture, the internet disruption. Then something unexpected happened. The internet arrived. At first, television companies believed the internet would never replace traditional broadcasting. But by the late 2000s, streaming platforms began to emerge. One company in particular would transform television forever: Netflix. Instead of waiting for scheduled broadcasts, viewers could watch anything, anytime. Entire seasons of shows became available instantly. Binge watching was born. The television industry was changing again. The smart TV, era today. Televisions are smarter than ever. Modern TVs connect directly to the internet. They stream movies. Play Satani Gay video games, display social media. Control smart homes. Companies like Samsung, Sete, and Sony now produce ultra-high-definition screens. Some displays are 4K, Others are 8K. Some TVs are so thin they look like glass paintings on the wall. The technology that began with the spinning disc in the 1880s has evolved into stunning digital. Windows. The future of television. The future of television may be even more extraordinary. Researchers are developing technologies that could transform the viewing experience completely. Transparent screens, holographic displays, virtual reality broadcasts, interactive storytelling powered by artificial intelligence. One day, viewers may not just watch television, they may step inside the story, living characters, exploring digital worlds, participating in events. The boundary between viewer and screen may disappear. The box that changed the world. From a spinning disc invented by TNT geek by Pencrom I Bo by a do Television has traveled an astonishing journey. It has shaped culture, influenced politics, connected continents, and turned distant events into shared human experiences. What began as a scientific curiosity has become one of the most powerful communication tools ever created. And yet, the story of television is far from over. Because somewhere right now, in a laboratory, a studio, or a startup company, someone is already inventing the next screen that will change the world again.